Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Bruce Wilcox with IID. A lot of what Dr. Bradley said is some of the things that I was going to talk about too, so I won't repeat those. But I did want to talk to you for a few minutes about how in the last year or 2 years we have realized, we being the Imperial Irrigation District, Imperial County, Salton Sea Authority, and others, that we had to come up with some workable solutions for at least short-term and probably mid-term to long-term Salton Sea restoration. And I wanted to talk for a few minutes today about one of those programs that we've rolled out. We partnered with Imperial County. The Salton Sea Authority has been heavily involved in developing a plan we call Salton Sea Restoration and Renewable Energy Initiative, and that's going to be part of the larger-scale Salton Sea Restoration Program moving forward. That takes an incremental approach to development at the Salton Sea. It also has a couple of other very important components, one being renewable energy. I think both Phil and Phil is going to talk about the renewable energy, but I'll talk a little bit more about the habitat. But the renewable energy component is important because it might provide some level of funding for additional restoration. It provides economic stimulus, which will also be discussed later. And it helps us with air quality mitigation, which is one of our bigger concerns moving forward. The water transfer, exacerbated Salton Sea playa exposure. And we all may have some different ideas of how much playa is going to be exposed. It's tens of thousands of acres. It doesn't really matter. We can argue about 50 acres here or 100 acres there. We're going to have to treat what is exposed and what is emissive. And one of the things in the beginning was that we understood that there would be a Salton Sea restoration program as part of the QSA. I know there are different opinions about that, but that's what our board thought. And that the mitigation plans for particularly air quality took that into account. So if we don't have some meaningful restoration at the Salton Sea, the air quality mitigation is going to be much more expensive. And in the end, that is a state of California responsibility contractually under the QSA. So one of the things we did in the last year, 2 years since the MOU, is work on a plan that could incrementally walk habitat and other development out around the edges of the playa as it exposes. That's where our air quality issues are. That's where we want to concentrate it. The other part of that to keep in mind, though, is the salinity levels at the Salton Sea. Dr. Bradley mentioned those. And when we get about 60 parts per thousand, we think that's where the fishery is going to be most stressed, and we'll probably lose the fishery and lose the piscivorous birds. So this habitat we're building is shallow water habitat and deeper water fish habitat. The state of California actually stepped up and designed the toughest part of this, the species conservation habitat, the deep water habitat, which will be built later this year, get started, I think, later this year. We've been involved in that. The plan for the incremental habitat has larger reservoirs to gravity feed water, and those will be fish habitat. So we'll have some level of fish habitat that's stabilized. I'm not suggesting that we'll be able to replace the habitat that will be lost at the Salton Sea, but we'll have higher value habitat that's more manageable and more sustainable. One of our big messages in all of this from the beginning has been smaller Salton Sea, but sustainable Salton Sea. So we'll march this habitat out over the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and we'll do it in a manner, particularly in the southeast corner of the Salton Sea, but in other areas too, that allows for whatever kind of future Salton Sea restoration there might be. I too am not a big proponent of the sea-to-sea, but I don't want to preclude anything. And so these designs don't preclude any other kind of restoration that might happen at the Salton Sea. That plan is in final stages of review internally, and we should have that plan out by the end of July for everyone to review. That plan needs, and this will not come as a surprise to, I think you hear this a lot, that plan needs funding. We need to look at Prop 1 monies and some other monies moving forward. The other part of that plan that I think is important for right now is to understand that we have lots of discussions about shovel-ready projects, and we have several of those ongoing right now. Red Hill Bay, which is a project that we're working on with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and combines renewable energy and habitat together, and then species conservation, which we're working on with the state. Those two projects are essentially ready to go. We're working on some final funding issues with Red Hill Bay. But a lot of the rest of these projects, whether it's the Salton Sea Authority's restoration plan, projects the county has, projects that Riverside County has, these plans are at a concept level or a little beyond that. And they need to go to design level, and they need to go through the permitting. We talked a lot today earlier with some of our friends up here at the Capitol about trying to streamline that permitting process. And I think we've got some great ideas about an MOU with the federal government for Corps of Engineers. We need some help with that. But I think we're in a place right now where in the next year or so we could roll out a lot of these things. But we need to make sure that everyone understands that we need to redefine shovel-ready to projects that still need the final planning and their environmental documentation. It's incredibly important, I think, to making this plan work.
In some of the backup information here, it says the Salton Sea Action Plan will be completed in the summer of 2016. I know you also talked about a document that will be done here at the end of this month, is my understanding. Are we beginning to rally around sort of one course of action, that this is going to be the plan to make the Salton Sea an asset that's greater than its liabilities?
I'll start. Yeah. I think that's exactly what we're trying to do, and we're trying to do that in stages or phases because we've simply run out of time. If we'd started this 10 years ago, we could do it differently. But this incremental approach is not a full-scale restoration, and it's not meant to be, but it is something that I think in general everyone agrees with. The question was asked earlier about sea to sea. There's all these other kinds of plans, and one of the things that's always held us up is the silver bullet syndrome, where we're looking for this absolute solution to the Salton Sea, and it isn't there. So we need to move forward with things like this. We've heard some really good plans lately from the Salton Sea Authority from that restoration. Yeah, I think we are rallied around that. I think this is something we can move forward. Mr. Cordova mentioned the funding issue, and there's always that issue, but we can probably fix that too. I'm fairly confident. So yes, I think finally we're all pulling in the same direction. We've all got slightly different ideas of what it might look like when we're all done, but we all know that we've got to do it.